Thank you very much, Manorama HORTUS, for this fantastic hospitality so far and really fantastic venue here. It's so good to see so many youngsters and so many people coming and attending these sessions. Thank you very much, Ruchir, it's always a pleasure to talk to you about especially on this magnificent book that you've just come out with. I want to begin actually, since the blurb says that this conversation is about a novel which is a city novel and also a study in character. So I have made after reading the book, I have made a sort of a pen portrait of the author. Ruchir Joshi. So I'll just take 2 minutes. This is what I figured out after reading the novel. Ruchir Joshi, male, heterosexual, World War II junkie, particularly obsessed with jet fighters, loves jazz, impressionistic painting, Bengal Jatra, Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh in particular, hates cubism, surrealism, and Presidency College. Is a Hindustani classical music aficionado with partiality towards Drupad. Is an Epicurean, especially loves French, Bengali, and Chinese cuisine. Probably cooks well too. He's a Bhadralok, very much a Rabindranath Tagore man, but has an eye out for the serious side of life. He's a tennis and cricket fan, but not sure a fitness freak. Is much into the world of cinema, as he's a filmmaker too. Well aware of the various genres and waves in world cinema. But above all, I think Ruchir Joshi is truly, madly, deeply in love with Calcutta. Have I got this pen portrait kind of?
Hello everyone, namaskaram. Thank you Hortus for this invitation. It's one of the best organized, most vibrant festivals I've ever seen. Satish, thanks for that. I would give you about 6 out of 10.
Oops, that's too low.
So first of all, jet fighters, no, but Second World War aviation, which was mostly propeller-driven aircraft, yes.
Okay.
So that's fine. Okay. I would say I'm post-Tagore. I admire Tagore, but actually I'm much more interested in what happens after Tagore. The rest of it is about correct. Calcutta is a love-hate relationship. It
Okay.
cannot be a clean, unfiltered love for a complicated city like Calcutta, which makes you into a complicated person as well. So I sometimes really don't like Calcutta. I hate it. I'm angry with it. And at the same time, I'm in love with it. And at the same time, I obviously fell in love with that period, wanting to know what this crazy, tumultuous period during the Second World War, where the city is completely transformed, what that was like. So, yeah.
And what's your issue with Presidency College?
I have no issue with Presidency College. I'm a Presidency alumni myself. But I know...
Pompous...
just as I know, because I went to this public school called Mayo College, I know how much people hated my public school, and I know how much people hated Presidency as an elite institution.
Few adjectives he uses for people who have come out of Presidency are supercilious,
that is like,
pompous,
Yeah, but it's true, because, I mean, if you look at... And Xavier's also, by the way. Presidency and Xavier's were male bastions which were detested by a lot of other Calcuttan, educated Calcuttans, and Presidency gives us the entire almost Politburo of the CPM, plus all the leadership of the Congress. The Trinamool, different, doesn't come from Presidency College.
That's true. That's right.
Difference.
We'll just come to the characters, the books a little bit. But what actually struck me the most when reading the book, it's a big book. It's a 900-page book. It's it seems a bit daunting before you start.
Yeah.
But once you are, once at least in my case, once I started reading, it's serious. I mean, it's a real page turner, and it's, to use a cliche, it's unputdownable really. And what really struck is also the architecture of the whole book. It's almost like with this, what shall I say, professional, mechanical, clinical precision that it is sort of structured, it seems. In the sense that, it seems like, I mean, if it were in the end, of course, it is about a hotel, but if it were an architect, it will be an airy, spacious, bright room, with which easy to maneuver, very exciting to look at what's there next, So that's a feeling that I got. So this architecture of the book, I mean, for a big book like that, how tough was it to make it so simple for the reader?
Well, I started off determined to do a book which drew the reader into that time, but also into a complex narrative in an accessible way. I wasn't planning for it to be such a big book, but as the stories grew and as the incidents developed and the arguments developed, it took the shape it did. And I kept trying to cut the book down. I also looked at whether I could cut the book into two and
Yeah.
have a complete novel from the first half and a complete novel from the second part. And it was, and me and my editors and closely associated friends who are very good, sharp readers, all of us came to the conclusion that no, the weaving was too tight and it had to be one story. It was
Though,
not.
you know, I must say it would have helped people who read in the on their beds. It's so, I know it will be.
No. So the latest advice I'm getting from people is they're taking this paperback. I'm not suggesting anyone attack books per se, but there's 2 or 3 people I know have torn the book into half and got it bound into a thinner volume.
Yeah.
And
That's-
I kept trying to tell the publishers, please produce a 2-volume, 1-box set, but
Yeah.
it was economically deemed not feasible because it would make the book more expensive.
Yeah.
But I think reading-wise, it might have helped because then if you have a 350-page normal-sized novel, you read that part 1 first and then you read part 2. But anyway, that is
Yeah.
as it is. It's a fat book.
So a
but
bit
as
more about
you
the
say,
architecture itself,
hopefully,
yeah.
once you get into it, it was like, what keeps the reader moving, what keeps the reader reading. And I tried not to be difficult just for the sake of being difficult or complicated for the sake of being complicated or trying to show off, oh, I can do this or I can do that. I kept it simple. That this is a story and let the story lead you and dictate to you how things work. It's like Umberto Eco says, the artist has a right to set up their own rules. But once they set up the rules, they have to follow. That's a pact they make with the receiver of the art, whether it's painting or theater or film or literature, that these are the rules. And this is the pact I have with you, that as long as you recognize the rules, I as a writer or painter or filmmaker will follow those rules across this work of art. So
Yeah.
my rule was that, yes, the story will move in and out of the 1970s back to the 40s and will move in and out between 3, 4, 5 different characters. But otherwise, I will keep it absolutely easy for you to follow and to hold on to.
In fact, that's another very sort of an interesting and a clever device. Though the book is based in the past, I mean in the 1940s, but it's actually based in 2 pasts. One story happens in the 1940s where the characters are very young. They're sort of trying to figure out their lives, and the next happens in the mid 70s, mid to late 70s, where these people would have been 30, 40 years older. Right,
In
so
their
that
50s and 60s.
now they are and some dead. I mean, some of the characters may have gone either. So that is a very, very interesting sort of a device or a ploy because you're reading about somebody who's 30. You're reading about their youth, and suddenly in the next few pages you're reading about what happened to them 30, 40 years later. Right?
Later. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I was interested in it's a device people have used before, which is to look at the historical period from the contemporary period. But I was like, if I look at it from right now, it's already 70, 80 years, which wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to see how that time felt 30 years down the line or 40 years down the line. And also how those critical years of the famine and partition and communal violence and the British about to leave, but so many people flooding in, ironically, just before the white man leaves.
Yeah.
The town is filled with more white men than ever before because of the soldiers who've come in from America, Australia, New Zealand, for 3 or 4 years. What that feels like, and the memories of that time, from the time where Calcutta is finally begin to disintegrate from the great cultural and commercial capital it was. And by the late 70s, it is falling apart, really. So I wanted to catch it at that moment. And so I actually went into 2 pasts.
Yeah.
And the book finishes before there's any computers,
Yeah.
anything digital.
Yeah.
or it's
So actually,
cassettes, records.
yes. So
Yeah.
for today's reader today, the 70s themselves are way back. I mean, they are quite a bit in their past. I mean,
Yeah, 50 years ago now.
not of my age maybe, but of many other. And then so that's why. So that the 70s themselves are so far removed in some ways. I mean, especially of the things that have happened. In the intervening years, and then there is this other one which is even more removed, right? I mean, it's like so that, yeah, so instead of coming I mean, most books that one reads is say past and present. The present is now, but here the present itself is about
A while back.
yeah.
I also wanted to move from one crisis, which was that moment of famine and then partition in Calcutta in the late 40s, from 43 basically to 1950, 52. I wanted to move to the next crisis moment, which is the Naxalites are just over, the emergency is just over. Although that's a real fulcrum hinge point in Bengal's history and Calcutta's history. So I wanted to catch it after those moments also to say, okay, that was one hinge moment, another hinge moment, and now you're looking at it from just beyond those moments. What does it feel like? That is what I thought was interesting for me.
Yeah,
So
and the other and also what happens in the 70s also. I mean, when you're reading it from today's political, this the setup that is going on. I mean, how relevant so many things that were happening in the 70s. Of course, what were happening in the 40s was definitely so. But even in the 70s, I mean, how we are seeing the consequences of so many things, of which
yeah, and it's today. Yeah, what
It's-
we're facing today
Yeah.
has its roots in that in the 40s time and also in the 70s time.
yeah.
And that whole business of the feeling of facing the abyss, facing multiple crises, having no faith in any institution left,
Yeah.
uh, feeling of anarchy and wildness and violence, all that is there already in and throughout the book, and which is why I think it's hopefully relevant for today.
And
So it's not a direct kind of analogy or a model for what we are facing today.
Yeah.
But people can at least face it. Okay, other young people at other times, this is what they saw and felt.
Yeah.
So it's not new, not for the first time that people are feeling what they're feeling today.
Exactly. And in the 40s, what it was, starting from pre-independence to the, after we got independence, etc. The idea of India, so to say, the country, the way it's supposed to follow. By the 70s, it's already kind of, going some other way. Things are disintegrating, and then now in the present, they seem to have gone a complete U-turn in many ways, in many senses.
Well, as we know, U-turns can have other right turns and
Yes,
left turns,
of course.
hopefully.
Yeah,
So that's history
that's
for you.
how history goes
So-
on. Ruchir, the other thing, I mean, since we have to, we were discussing about the characters in the book, without giving too much away, to the new readers, the other, what the reader, once you finish the book, what you come out, the other, the cleverness with which you have distilled these characters, for what they represent politically, the class-wise, economically, the background, their backstories, etc. So the book basically has what, 6, 7 main characters, half a dozen.
Not even. I mean, I think the main characters
could
about
say,
5.
You could say 5
And
and
then
couple
other
of
secondary
supporting
characters,
But
yeah.
these 5 main characters are like selected, chosen, and fleshed out. So much in detail, it just gives the. I mean, I'm sure that that's a point of it, to give an overall political, religious, economic sense of what was going on at that time, right? Like, for instance, there is this young, idealistic communist girl. There is this suave, rich. This who wants to be a painter, who's waltzing and with, and then
Privileged guy with cultural
yeah. So I mean,
pretensions,
you
yeah.
could do it. I'll be, and then of course there is this. There's this pickpocket and a smuggler who's this sort of low life of that time, and who's living this, most interesting and yet dangerous kind of life, because all that was going on. So would you like to talk a little bit about these 5 characters and what they really represent?
Yeah. So the trick again for me was to not make the characters so schematic that, oh, this is upper class, this is middle class, this is working class, or this is Hindu, this is Muslim, this is man, this is woman. I wanted to go against that and not have like giving you a sort of, a sort of predictable cross section of society that you would get in a primer or a history
Yeah.
book or something. I mean, this is a work of art. It's not a history book. So things might be skewed in one direction or another direction. So one character is Nirupama Majumdar. Nirupama is a woman who's just a young woman who's just finished her history BA and is looking as what she's going to do in her life. And she comes from a cultured, middle class, primarily Bangla speaking family. And she's learning English, but her English isn't that good. But one of her friends is very good with English. And these three women, she and two other friends, decided to do something quite radical, which did happen in those times, is to move out of their houses, not get married, and start living in a kind of women's commune, meaning three of them form a kind of a house where they rent a house and the three of them move in, and all of them are working for political parties, but also trying to earn money and doing something, right?
It's in my bag. I'll just get the book also. It's in my bag. Continue. Please go on. Yeah, Nirupama.
And it happened previously also, but so Nirupama is from the Communist Party. Roma, her friend, is a Congress socialist wing. And Titir is more towards the Hindu Mahasabha, though also connected to the Congress. So all three of them have different political beliefs, but they are really school friends and very, very close friends.
And they are kind of chumming it up in a...
And they're chumming it up in this little apartment that they've rented in South Calcutta, right? So, and Nirupama is one character. Imogen is a young, slightly older than the other character. She is a British woman who's come away after being, shell-shocked and damaged by the bombing blitz where she was volunteering. And she has joined her parents. Her father is in the administration of the Raj. And she's an English woman who comes from an upper-class conservative background, but is very interested in what's going on around her, who these Indians are, what their culture is, what this city is about. So she's curious and open, unlike a lot of other Britishers at the time. And so she's wandering around and comes into contact with various other characters. Kedar Lahiri.
And she's in this strange predicament because, Quit India movement has just been announced. So actually everybody is asking her to get the hell out. And she's getting more and more into, the city.
She senses that the British are not welcome and she completely understands why they are not. And at the same time, she's drawn into the friendships and culture of the city.
Yeah.
Then there's Kedar Lahiri, who's from a very rich Brahmo family. And he's, fluent in English, and he would have gone to Oxford had the war not intervened. He's very bright. But he also wants to be a painter and not really follow in his father's footsteps in the law business that his family has. They're also zamindars, so they're wealthy. There's no shortage of money. And he has a sports car, and he has a whole different graph through the whole novel in the city.
And many women friends.
And women friends. Because he's also good looking and charming and suave. And then there is...
would Kedar be, if it were an autobiographical character, would he be the closest to you in the...
Not really, because I did come from a wealthy anglicized background.
Okay.
The painting stuff he shares with me, and this love for literature he shares. But then the love for literature is also there in Nirupama.
Yeah.
Painting stuff is a bit particular. Yes, I love painting.
And especially, European...
yeah. And tennis, I'm a tennis player, but I'm not I love watching tennis, but I'm not a tennis aficionado. Okay. And there's not much cricket in the books. I don't know.
No, there is only, there are these little phrases that, this is something that you have left outside the off stump.
Things like that. People would use that at that time. I am a big cricket freak, but I made sure not everything.
No, there is no cricket as such in the book. Yeah.
And this one is also not there. Cricket is not there. So that's Kedar. But he would be there's some overlaps, but there's some overlaps with almost all the characters in the book.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
And then finally there is Gopal, whose last name we will leave for now. And Gopal is a young pickpocket in a gang run by a man who's simply known as Ustad. And Ustad has many interests: prostitution, smuggling, pickpocketing, all kinds of businesses. And Gopal is a pickpocket from childhood. He's been trained and stuff and worked in the Ustad's organization. And on the day we come across him, which is the day Tagore dies, is his last day of work as a pickpocket, because that day he's about to be promoted into a deeper, darker, much more violent world of crime.
Of crime, yeah.
And he gets there, we see his promotion, and then we see him getting drawn into this really dangerous, dark world. So those are the four main characters. And then there's a fifth character, unnamed, and we don't even specify the gender at that time and who that person is. but they are looking back at this time from the 1970s. And then halfway through the book, you realize who they are,
Yeah.
and then they become a proper character.
About Gopal, just one. I was listening to one of your other discussions about the book, and you said, is it that Satyajit Ray's he got
Yeah,
picked?
so-
Apparently, Satyajit Ray's his pocket got picked at Tagore's funeral.
So I took that story from there.
So that's a true story.
It's a true story.
I see.
But that is Satyajit Ray, who comes down from Shantiniketan, and he speaks English very well and everything, but he's not wealthy Jamindar family like Kedar
No,
is.
and the
But
pretty
he's
boy
Brahmo
that.
and he's anglicized and he's very good with English. But it's a different profile again from Kedar.
And the Rabindranath Tagore's funeral, of course, it plays a pivotal kind of a role in the book. It starts with that, and each character has a sort of a relationship with that event, right? I mean, it changes some in many ways. It changes some in some ways, the others in other ways. Would you like to, that part about Nirupama? When that's a very interesting. It gives a flavor of the book as to. That's why I thought I'll get this out. Would you be able to see the?
So, Nirupama and her friend Titir are in North Calcutta waiting for the funeral procession to pass by. And they are on something called Harrison Road. Because in those days, Calcutta has a major market called Bada Bazaar near the station and near where Howrah Bridge is now. And that was a market run by basically a lot of traders, Marwadis and other non-Bengalis mostly, some Bengalis. But it was also the place where the biggest commerce in Calcutta took place. And the funeral procession was going to pass through that on the way to the cremation ghat at Nimtolla. So I will make little extracts from this.
Should I hold the mic?
No, it's fine. I can do it. The news has reached Scottish Church College just after midday, and classes have been terminated. When Neeru told her professor she was heading to pay her respects, Bokul Babu has laughed. Yes, why not? Go and say farewell to your great bourgeois champion. It will help you realize his time is gone, long gone, even before him. Neeru had felt anger rising when she heard this, two kinds of anger, one following the other. First, there was a jerk of dismay that a teacher she respected so much could be so disrespectful and dismissive of a truly great man. And then the anger of a frustrated child who suspects that a grown-up has just said something true, unavoidable, and bitter. Could the great poet ever have imagined that there could be so much waiting for a sight of his so many waiting for the sight of his passing body? Perhaps. Could he have imagined that there would be street thieves preying on the people waiting? Perhaps, but Neeru wasn't sure. Are the masses unchanging? Can they remain so? Neeru feels Titir tugging at her hand. Hey, look, do you see that building? Which one? They & Co. No, next to it, Sri Ambe Engineering Equipment. Yes, I think I know someone who lives there. I went in there once. Shall we see if we can get to the roof? So they make their way to the roof of the building. Coming into the open, they're on the terrace of the building. Coming into the open, they see a row of backs leaning over the parapet. A couple of people turn around and look, but no one pays them any attention. Neeru can feel both the green smoothness and the black terrace grit underneath. Luckily, Romola, who's the third friend, lucky Romola to be in Birbhum today in Shantiniketan, where surely the poet's spirit went once it left his body. Except that Neeru has now understood that there is no spirit, there is just the body, and nothing ever leaves it except bodily materials and breath. Again, Titir reads her mind and murmurs into her ear. You say you have no faith, so why did you come here today? Neeru pretends she hasn't heard the question. Neeru leans over to look at Harrison Road through the cat's cradle of electric and tram wires stretching across its length. From above, she can see the crowd shifting and surging aimlessly, the narrow strip of grey road widening and narrowing as the roomers move the bands of people on either side. Around the girls, the people of the roof are knowledgeable. Someone living near Jorashanko, the Tagore's mention, has used the telephone to call in the next building. In turn, the next building, the news has been called out over the terraces. The divine poet's body has been on a truck initially, but now people had lifted it on their shoulders. The bier should pass by soon.
Excellent. See, this is in fact a great example. The next question that I was coming to, I mean, this passage is such a great example. The book is so cinematic. while you read, most of us can imagine them climbing the stairs, them looking down into the street, the camera pans out. Then, in fact, right from the beginning, from the first page, it's a slow pull out, isn't it, of Niru, and
Kind of track back.
it's a track, yeah, sort of a track back shot of, from a specific to a larger thing. And, when I say cinematic, I don't mean it's like a film script. It's the oral and the visual detailing, and almost the camera angles are described, how we should look at. So it's very cinematic. So as you're reading, you're actually imagining all this in your head, so I'll come to the next question first. So is that, I mean, is it you're also a filmmaker? Is that has an influence, or is it like, I mean, it's a...
I think to the extent that, if you're working with a film, you want suddenly startlingly different points of view which move the story along. You see things from different characters' points of view. You get the unexpected cut. You need the narrative moving in a way that surprises you. So those are things and sensibilities of mine that I definitely have brought to bear. But equally, along with the visuals and the sound, I try to imagine and recreate the smell and the texture and just the haptic feeling of being in the situation of that city. Because whenever I read about it, did my research, spoke to people from that time, I realized what a different city Calcutta must have felt like was at that time from anything that even someone like me born in 1960 could have imagined. It was already 15 years after this time when I was born, and about 20 years since I began to, my memory starts, say, at 65, and I'm 5 years old.
Yeah.
And the city is already transformed, not beyond recognition, but quite radically. And already in the 70s and 80s, it becomes something yet more different,
Yeah.
So I really wanted to make sure to go back into the time where you have gas lamps on the streets. When you dial a phone, very few people have a phone.
Yeah.
And you call an operator and you give a 4-digit number saying Alipur 3961 or something, or sometimes even a 3-digit number if it's an old telephone number. And you take a tram, you take a bus, everything costs a very, very tiny amount of money compared to today. And it's not crowded, it's not dirty, it's not full of poor people begging on the street. Because all that comes to Calcutta after the famine and partition. Before that, it's actually a very clean, well-run city with obviously big working class, a poor population also, and some very rich and wealthy people, but a lot of middle-class people as well. And it's at the same time a very cosmopolitan city at that time, right? So it's very different from the Calcutta we imagined see today or knew in the 60s, 70s, 80s.
So even then there is the tea, there's Flurries, there is a tea lounge.
Absolutely. Flurries, the Great Eastern Tea Lounge and the nightclub.
Yeah,
there is,
the songs and the dancers and the waltzes
and all that. So jazz plays a big part, the live bands, there's no disco, there's no recorded music. You basically have, for the westernized people who like their dancing and singing of Western music, you have maybe 20, 25 bands able to survive in the city.
Yeah.
Both mixed English-American bands plus Anglo-Indian bands.
Yeah.
So Naresh Fernandez is here somewhere in the festival.
Yeah.
He's written a wonderful book called Taj Mahal Foxtrot, but he details the history of jazz in Bombay in the 30s and 40s. And Calcutta, of course, is the twin city. These people are moving back and forth between Bombay and Calcutta and the hill stations and other places coming south also to perform. And that whole culture is also depicted in the book a little bit. In fact,
the 8 chapters that are there and the subheads, which is very helpful.
8 books.
8 books, yeah. And the subheads that are there, each one of the, small kind of subheads, small to big, some are quite big. Each one of them, it's like a set piece. It's almost like a set piece of, say, Coen Brothers, or it's imagined in that way. There's a start and finish, and there's a middle, of course, and it starts somewhere, it goes somewhere, and it finishes somewhere else. But the whole thing is a unit.
Yeah.
So
the whole book consists of 116 sections, the longest of which is about 15,000 words, but most of them are about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 words long.
That's right.
So you are in a scene, and then you're on to the next scene, on to the next scene, on to the next scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, the question which follows is: do you think this could be a sort of a material for a serial or a film or an OTT? Of course, it's going to be, if somebody does pick it up, it's going to be a very big, mammoth, mega budget kind of a project.
So there's a perverse part of me. I've always wanted to make a feature film, and I have not yet made one. I've made essay films, documentary films, films which have fictional elements in them, but are not by any means a fiction story film. So when I started to write this, I realized that I had at my disposal a free cast of hundreds of thousands of people, and I could move the camera up and down or wherever I wanted to. So I was perverse, like, I'm going to make sure I'm writing this book because it can't be filmed. And then when I finished, I realized actually it is very filmable. But whoever wants to do it will need a big budget, because it cannot be done on a small budget, I don't think.
To recreate
do justice to it.
Correct.
And you would need a very, very solid script, which I think would drop some of the elements I would also for a film, but also add some things and stitch together a kind of a OTT series.
But because
it
now
can happen.
Yeah, because now we
Let
have
somebody think about it and make me an offer, and I'll think about it.
Yeah, it's
and
definitely,
it won't be just about the money. It'll also be about someone who can actually do justice to it. Because frankly, without naming names, I've seen some favorite books of mine recently being turned into TV series and into OTT series, and been quite disappointed with the results. So I want to make sure that it's not just that somebody gives me a lot of money, I say yes, please go ahead.
But
it would have to be someone who's quite acute and intelligent,
right,
plus someone who has a budget.
But the other, those 116 sections you said, right? So these are, Ruchir started writing this book way back. He says some 20 years ago.
Yeah.
This is much before, these TV serials, when they will leave you hanging at the end of episode 1 to go. But this book actually has all that in these sections on its own. Each one of these cliff, it leaves it, there's a cliffhanger at the end without now of course it's become so formalized. You like in the last 5 minutes of an episode you're going to look for that hook, right, to go to the next. But these 20 years ago you had maybe foreseen this OTT kind of trick, is it?
No, it just seemed like the sensible thing to do, and that's how it. My first novel also has elements of that in it, where you leave things hanging and move, because it comes from cinema, it comes from theatre also, where you stop at an unexpected point and then pick it up later from another unexpected point. We say, oh, that story is being picked up now, but from a different angle.
Yeah.
So like that.
Ruchir, the other thing I wanted to ask, of course, it's completely fiction. It's like a really great story. But the historical facts and the things that the events that happen are real, right? For instance, to the minutest detail, like which are the fighter jets that they were using at that time?
Not jets, fighter
planes. Those, not jets.
Jets come later.
Or how Gopal for the first time sees a machine gun. He's trying
automatic pistol.
Because he thinks he only knows of a revolver, right? So he suddenly got this automatic pistol, and he's trying to figure out where are the bullets, because it doesn't have that goal, which he's seen, I think,
cylinder,
in some that cylinder, which I think he's seen in some films or wherever. So there is a whole lovely little piece here about him figuring out where will the bullets be. Because it's all shut. There is nothing you can see, right? So, so those are real. Those are all facts. What I mean is, it was that kind of a pistol which was available at that time, right?
Yes.
So, did you actually go to archives, do research?
I knew something about the period. I'd also spoken to a lot of people, and then actually I started writing the book a bit late, where a lot of people who could have helped me were dead already. But luckily I caught 3, 4, 5 people in their late 80s as I just began to write. And they told me some great stories. And then there were the libraries and the archives in British Library in London, and also people's memories of what their fathers and mothers had said and things like that. So stitching all that together.
And particularly for the war period, the uniforms of the Americans, for instance, the way the Brits would be, the characters difference between the way they spoke, the slang they used, the beer they drank, the steak they ate. I mean, this kind of, so those, I mean, did you have to really, you must have read through a lot at that time?
Yeah, and also whatever details I came across, I was making notes. So for example, there's a small thing where Germans were the hated enemy, but before the war starts, a lot of the rich people in Calcutta have Mercedes-Benz. And so Mercedes-Benz has a dealership and service centers in Calcutta. But when the war starts, everyone suddenly starts covering up that Mercedes car because it's seen as a German, right?
Yeah.
Then at that time in free market, beers, all kinds of beer was being imported, exported. So one of the big imports was German beer was very good. They were importing Beck's beer from Germany. It would come. And so there were still supplies from before the war of Beck's beer that had come in. And people were still drinking German beer in Calcutta during the war. And then once those bottles finished, they needed the bottles. So locally brewed beer was being put back into the Beck's bottles and sold. Because bottles were a thing, right? Tagore's funeral, everyone who goes to that funeral reports that it was such a crush of a crowd that you lost everyone. Satyajit Ray, this gentleman, I'm forgetting his name, Torun Mujumdar or whatever his name was, everyone said, "Amader choti khule gache." Mane, basically, you could not hang on to your slippers or even sandals because the crush meant that you lost. And so there were, the funeral procession went ahead, but behind it, there's a river of
slippers
and chappals. And that becomes a sort of image metaphor through the whole book.
It's a great imagery,
Right. So that's also based on
real facts.
On real stuff. There's a scene in a village where there's a wedding feast, and in East Bengal, small island, where the villagers have called the barat at the groom's side. And where do you store the food for a wedding feast? You can only store it on the boats because there's no space on that narrow island to store food enough for a wedding. So there's two boats full of dal, 2 boats full of rice, 2 boats full of meat, and more than 2 boats. But there's a whole description of these boats floating in the water. Again, described to me by someone who lived in the East Bengal villages of that time.
Yeah.
Right? An informant is tied to a tree, a British informant, very cruel scene.
Yeah.
And they put honey and sugar in certain parts of his body, and the red ants come and eat into that part of the body. That's also a true story. So, I mean, but the thing is, you have to take historical facts and things and not have your research start doing its own cabaret dance on the page.
Yeah, absolutely.
The research you do has to be subservient
yeah.
to the characters and plot of the story that you're trying to tell, while at the same time, macro, you're trying to create a time where you're making a political point, you're making a historical point, you're making a sociological point as well. But those can't be like textbook primers in a history book or a sociology book. So it's a tricky thing, writing a historical novel.
Correct. You just mentioned political, just one, I think we are running out of time. Just one question I had. So, the book is highly political, actually. I mean, it's very, very political in the sense, and also the way the political facts are weaved in, as you said. I mean, it's not like, now read this, this happened. It's not. So, for instance, a scene would start where, two people are trying to dance. I mean, they don't, they can't waltz, and they're, the man puts the hand behind the waist, and etc. is being discussed, and suddenly it ends with Gandhiji announcing Quit India movement, for instance, right? Or another scene where this girl, Neeru, is, I think, trying out gin for the first time, and she's really sort of, she and Imogen have really got pally, and they're like, sort of having this clubbing together. And then that scene ends with this, with the riots in, the political part of the book is very vivid.
Thank you for saying that, because yes, it was very important, the politics of it. I mean, I'm looking at it in terms of, I don't directly talk about the Hindu-Muslim riots and things, but it's seething and bubbling up and down across the whole beginning in the 1941, 42, 43. the communist movement is bubbling up, and at the same time, as you follow the book through, you realize why so many people leave the party
Yeah.
after the war, whether it's someone like Ritvik Ghatak or whether it's someone like Mahashweta Devi or someone, various people abandon the party because there's ideological differences and the party doesn't have space. And one should say this in Kerala because the
Yeah.
party doesn't have space for different kinds of sexuality, different kinds of morality, for the voices of women.
Yeah.
Forget about gay and queer voices, which we are now facing, but at that time that was
Not even
part of the
yeah.
Zehen, part of the imagination. But so there's also, the Communist Party doesn't escape unscathed, the Congress Party doesn't escape unscathed,
Yeah.
and neither does the Hindu Mahasabha, RSS, Muslim League,
Yeah.
all those guys, everyone, because there's 7 or 8 parties vying for control of India at this point. And Pakistan is like a gambit that Jinnah puts forward, or is seen as a gambit. That, oh, this is a joke, it's never going to happen, what
Yeah.
ridiculous thing. And suddenly it becomes reality. So that whole sense is also there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the whole book is formed, or is forming just the pre-independence moment in the novel. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think we've got signal to say that I think we are running out of time.
Okay.
So,
Any questions?
we could, if somebody wants to, has any questions, they can, please.
Thank you for that. Ruchir, I had this question that as a writer, when you're creating these characters, one character might be closer to your heart or your favorite character, maybe. Then how do you stop yourself as a writer from, like, in the narrative, be more partial to that character? How do you stop yourself from doing that?
It's like a parent. No, so one kid might be more favorite, a school teacher, where one kid you have to make sure that your least favorite student or your least favorite stepchild or whatever you want to call it, that you are nourishing them and feeding them and making sure that they're getting a proper education. So you actually, each time I found, and then weirdly what happens in the book is if you've got characters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're finding 1, 3, and 5 easy to write, and 2 and 4 are difficult to write. But then once you start paying attention to 2 and 4, 4 may still remain difficult to write, but 2 suddenly might become your favorite because you suddenly crack that. And then 1 and 3 become more difficult to write. So that, and it also happens in painting, I think, because when you're painting one part and you're kind of avoiding another part, oh, that's difficult. And then when you attack that and that takes precedence, then everything else is subservient to that new part you painted. Then you have to go back and balance things out. So that is.
So it's a kind of it's a dynamic while you're writing.
It's a dynamic movement. It's a very good question to
Yeah.
ask, because someone asked me this before and I couldn't provide a proper answer. Today I'm able to answer much better.
Yeah.
Because I've thought about it since then. So yeah, and basically. One of the things that has run through the book, if I can just take a few minutes to talk about it, is there are 2 or 3 musical ideas that are running through the book.
Yeah.
So one is, you got jazz aficionado and you got Drupad. I also love Khayal, I also love Carnatic music, by the way. But
Okay.
the thing is, one of the structures I had in mind from the very beginning is of a sense of an alap, if you look at North Indian Khayal actually, or Drupad, and then a Madhyalay, and then a fast speed crescendo climactic thing. But one thing happened when I was in residence in Switzerland in 2013 is I heard music by this American composer, very little known at that time, called Julius Eastman, who was a black gay composer who dies very young. And he wrote a piece for 4 grand pianos. And one is called Crazy Nigger, the other is called Evil Nigger, and the third one is called Gay Guerrilla. So they're clearly provocative titles. But the music is very abstract and very powerful. And all it is 4 grand pianos playing off each other for 3 40-minute pieces. And it was a life-changing concert for me. I was listening to it in an art hall in Basel. And I suddenly, after that, I was looking at my characters thinking, these are my 4 grand pianos.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And they have to come in and out in ways and create things. I mean, to the back of my head, you can't really render that.
Yeah.
But it was part of that was a parallel inspiration. So there were 2 or 3, and jazz and improvisation and all that was also going on in my head. So all these things were parallelly running through. subconsciously. You don't do it very consciously as you're trying to write. And so therefore that helps the characterization also, you know.
Yeah, and as you said, I mean, in jazz, it happens. You know, a player, a sax player is given an opportunity if he's really.
He does a solo.
Yeah, he does a.
In the old days, you don't politely wait for the solo to end. Somebody else will just cut in the middle of towards the end of the solo.
Yeah.
And jam with him and then snatch
Just
it away,
snatch it.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. So this does happen with the characters too. I mean, when one of them is sort of going and flowing, it's now the other one too.
Comes in and just, that was the attempt. Yeah.
We can take one more question if there is any.
There is somebody.
There's a question?
Yeah, there's a gentleman at the back.
Sir, I was the general question on writing itself.
Yeah.
So basically, there's always been a change of political sensibilities among common folk. So when you write something of a past era, like pre-independence, do you try to assert the political sensibilities of then, or do you try to put in a perspective of today's this thing?
Well, it's a tricky one because actually, for example, for that time, I've used the N word, which is used for black people in the West. I've used it quite freely. I've also used probably a few casteist things in the book because people would have done at that time. So you can't be politically correct from now in that sense. But where the sensibility of today comes in is in the past, if you read a book written closer to that time, there would have been a certain way of looking at, say, women or a woman's body. There would have been a certain way of looking at a man who prefers men to a heterosexual man. There would have been some way of looking at a woman who prefers women to a heterosexual woman. And from today's world, when I'm looking at that, I make sure that those prejudices, since they're no longer there in me, or at least I've managed to work them out to a certain extent from within me, that I'm not being bodyist or sexist or like a typical lechy man trying to describe a woman's body.
That's a good point.
Or making sure that different kinds of points of view are even or fairly or equally vividly represented. That sensibility is there. But you don't start correcting history suddenly and,
cancelling it,
people were prejudiced, people didn't even realize that to say something casteist or to say something...
misogynist.
I mean, like the Bengali word for black people was hopshi, right?
Yeah.
Which also matches the N word. And so that word is there littered through the book because that's what the Bengalis called. The Bengalis are also, Indians are also racist towards black people, African people, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you don't hide that or shove that under the carpet.
Yeah.
You have to keep that as a real point as in a portrait of the time. And the most liberal white guy in the book is also pretty racist to a certain extent. You know, it's kind of weird like that. So you have to be careful with that stuff. Also to not let sort of new slang creep in. Like there's some slang words which would have been correct for that time. And there are words that one would have used even in the 60s and 70s from America or from India, which would not have been there in the 40s.
Yeah.
So for example, no one says cool. Oh, that's cool. No. Because a few people, black Americans may in America have used the word cool. But no. But somebody will say, I don't get it or you don't get me.
Yeah.
Because that was there. You see? So you have to keep balancing like that.
Anyone else? Okay.
Shall I ask you a general question?
Yeah, your mic is not working. Oh, I'm not
working.
able to hear.
He's
Working, sir.
Yeah.
Shall I ask you a general question on...
A general question. Yes, please.
On today's fictions. Actually, the fictions started I think...
Sorry.
Fiction was started by the creators of modern world. Namely, I think Shakespeare, Francis Bacon, and they build a whole civilization on that. I think today's fictions are not that. It's only telling of that time, not going deep in historical classical novels.
I mean, what do you call classics? Is Kalidas classical? Are the great South Indian epics classical? Mahabharata, Ramayana, what are those?
Is the point that how the classics are so universal and today's fiction is not? Is that
No,
what he's
today's
Is that the point? I'm not
today-
able to
to-
understand your
to-
question.
Today's fictions are fictions inside fictions. Because we are already living in a fiction. Fiction created by our ancient 16th century fictionists. Father of fiction, Shakespeare and what you call Francis Bacon.
Bacon.
So I think, sorry.
But I don't know why you call Shakespeare father. He was a great playwright and fiction writer, a great imaginer of fictional moments. But I don't know if he's a father. He's a father of language in English language. And
He made all the world on a stage. Now we are.
Or maybe fiction always feels when at that time it's being written, maybe 100 years later, what we are writing today might seem, you know.
living in a
look
drama-
at Odyssey or the Odyssey, or if you look at the great Indian epics, if you look at the great Conference of the Bird, which is an Arab epic,
Yeah.
Iranian epic, Japanese fictions, I wouldn't give precedence to the great Western writers. They are among
means,
our forefathers, foreparents on
I
fiction.
mean, we are living in Natakame Ulagam. Means all the world in a stage. We are.
Do you not think it was like that at that time also?
No, not no problem.
But why? But Shakespeare was the most populist writer. He wrote. I mean, he just wrote for the gallery. You know, when he wrote. I mean, he just wanted. Is it a hit? Is it not? It's always he's wondering.
I can say because he created words for his novels.
That's true.
Some 3,000 words it is reported that he has read. So it is all a rise and fall of words. He began with the rise and fall of words. Now,
Yes, but those were spoken words. It was an oral history, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea of a book, a folio. I mean, Shakespeare's there's like 2 folios. One of them is doubted.
I know it's.
You know, the word on the page was not his medium. It was people like our thing of moral, remembering oral history,
of playing
poetry,
it out,
song.
Yeah.
You know, the book actually comes into being what after the Gutenberg press
Yeah.
in the 17th century, 16th.
really,
Someone to correct
yeah.
me.
That is the starting of literacy, I think.
So the business of sitting and having a book in your lap and reading for a common man, not a priest or a king, to be doing this.
It's quite
is-
recent,
Is
yeah.
only 300 years old.
Yeah.
It's not very old as a phenomenon, and
just-
it's already disappearing.
I just mean to that we have traveled away from reality and we are living in fiction.
Well,
That is very true.
that may
That
be
our
true, yeah.
politicians are creating fictions around us, very cheap ones.
And our fictions are inside that great fiction. So what-
That is true. The fiction within fiction. Do we live in reality or do we live in a network of warring fictions?
Yeah.
That is a question we all have to think about, which is a very good question. Thank you.